Esports as we know it is in some serious trouble. Just the other day, it was reported that the Guard, a notable esports organization and popular Valorant team, laid off all of its employees, which says a lot about job security in esports as it is, because one guy that they had just recently hired to work at the Guard relocated and then 2 days later was let go with all of the employees, rather than telling him, hey, maybe not move here after all. And now there's various sources talking about the LA Gorillas and the LA Gladiators potentially being on the chopping block for the next group of teams that are going to have to close their doors. There used to be a time in esports where people figured all you need is some serious financial backing and you'll be able to be successful. That doesn't really mean much now, because you look at the entire list of ownable assets by the Kroenke company that owned the Guard, and you can see that they don't have any problem whatsoever making money. And it also shines more of a light on how out of touch the owners for some of these esports organizations, or these leading investors for these esports organizations, actually are. Because if you're not passionate about esports as a whole, then you're not going to stick with it. Especially since most esports organizations operate at a loss anyway. You're not going to keep pumping money into something if you're not getting a good return on investment. With the amount of orgs that are closing their doors or on the verge of doing so, it really does not bode well for the amount of talent and people that are going to be out of jobs. There's clearly not going to be enough roles for everybody in esports, so some people are unfortunately going to have to transition out of the industry altogether. And this could just be the beginning, because apparently there are a lot of other orgs that are on the verge of bankruptcy and playing with a lot of borrowed money. And according to a reputable caster and former employee of Nerd Street Gaming, some of these organizations' names would surprise you. As I said, esports has investors and owners that are going to want a return on investment, especially when they put in a substantial amount of capital. But if you're not one of the top organizations in the industry, then that is just not going to be feasible. Many of these old investors and owners, they're not going to have a passion for esports, so if it's not making the money they expected or they heard from their buddies on a LinkedIn post one time, they're just gonna drop it really quickly. And it doesn't help that a lot of ventures in esports were trying to fit into the traditional sports mold, which does not work. In traditional sports, brands are the forefront. They are the king. They are the most powerful entities in that industry. But when it comes to esports, it's not so much about the brands and the organizations. It's about the people and the players and the content creators. Those are the ones that really control the direction that the industry is going. And this is especially true for content-centric organizations. If you have an organization that is more creator-focused and content-driven, they're going to have much more success than your basic esports team that's trying to place well in events and tournaments. So if there are big creators with many fans that support a lot of the things that they do, that's going to help drive even more value into that org. And that includes watching the esports teams that might be owned by some of these bigger content creators. Just like Moist Esports, which is owned, of course, by Moist Critical, one of the most popular YouTubers on the platform. Overall, we just have to stop trying to make esports into regular sports. It is not the same thing. People consume esports much differently than regular sports, especially if you look at the average amount of money that esports fans spend compared to NBA fans, for example. You'll have NBA fans spending on average $15 to every esports fan's $3. And when you encompass all of that, you can look at just so far in 2023 what the state of esports currently looks like. Just in the first 2 months, you have the Guard, eUnited, and Torrent HQ having to close their doors, and significant layoffs between FaZe, 100 Thieves, Optic, Immortals, Team Liquid, and Nerd Street Gamers. Even most of the esports news outlets have now gravitated to content that you would most likely find on live stream fails. We really have to remember that esports is the entertainment industry, except instead of being made up of long-term reputable companies, it's made up of only startups. Personally, I don't think that esports is dying, but it is a significant bubble that has has already begun to burst, and we are now seeing the outcome of that. The writing has been on the wall for quite some time, especially going back to my previous video about the end of Gears Esports, which you can find right here. Let me know down below how you guys feel about the current state of esports and where you think it's going to head next. I'm a great example of this. Instead of doing more esports casting, I'm trying to focus more on content. And I think you should too.